I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. We're here with ongoing BC election coverage. I got lost in there somewhere.
You've been doing a lot.
With me, Loyal Wooldridge, Kelowna Centre candidate for the NDP. Thanks for coming in.
Always a pleasure to be here.
30 minutes. 30 minutes. Start the timers now.
All right, let's do this.
Lots of candidates not speaking. Especially out of the BC Conservative Party. What do you think of that? What do you make of that?
Well, I think what's really important in this election is voting for people that are doing the work that can answer the questions. And when I see folks not speaking, I generally think it's because they don't have the answers or the plan to answer the questions and the solutions behind our big challenges. So I can't really think of anything other than that. I've been busy on City Council now for 2 terms, working hard to really understand our city so that I can deliver and advocate for Kelowna, and that's been my commitment since day one.
Obviously, a very popular candidate with Kelowna as well as a councillor, and then obviously you're trying to move that popularity into the provincial realm. And you're up against a few candidates there. You're up against Christina Lone from the Conservative Party
and an independent,
Dr.
Michael Humer, and then we also have Bryce Tippie for the Green Party.
Right, and I interviewed Bryce.
Yeah.
And I did interview Dr. Humer, but not Christina Lone. You know, Christina, if you want to come in. Just saying. Gavin, I've done with Gavin, so he speaks a lot. He's well-spoken.
Yeah.
What are the issues? You're out there door knocking, obviously. What are the issues that you're hearing from people?
Well, not only have I been knocking on thousands and thousands of doors since June, I've been on council for 6 years to really understand our city from a grassroots level. And so we've got big issues in Kelowna that are really affecting people's lives. And I think top of mind when we think about downtown is crime and safety, making safe communities. That's why I joined council in the first place, to understand at that level, but now to advocate provincially. Housing, obviously, top of mind, cost of living, and then access to healthcare. All big issues, which I think you're going to hear from every candidate. But it's really about who has that plan to overcome them and really advocate for Kelowna. British Columbia is really important, and we also need to make sure that who we're electing here locally can advocate for us.
On that though, BC NDP have had the wheel for 7 years. They've had the ability to make a plan. What I hear from the party in general is a lot of negativity on John Rustad and the Conservatives, but I don't hear them claiming a lot of this is what we've done, this is what we've done, this is why you should give us 4 more years. What do you think of that? Do you hear that from the public as well?
Yeah, I think people forget that we had 16 years of rule of a previous government, the BC Liberals, that cut budgets across the board that have caused a lot of the social challenges we see. We've had 7 years with the NDP. It's going to take time to overcome a lot of these big issues. We're coming out of a global pandemic, record global inflation, big challenges, headwinds that we're facing, and so it takes time to overcome a lot of these challenges. Housing alone takes 3 to 4 years before you see something actually built and occupied. So we do need more time to see that success and be judged on it without a global pandemic, hopefully.
Yeah, let's not have another one of those.
That'd be preferable.
Healthcare. You talk about healthcare. Oliver Emergency Room, which is our area kind of thing.
Yep. Over
30 closures from January till now.
Yeah.
Over 30 closures. And then some of them in the north, we've seen the press releases when they come out and they say, you drive 400, this is the extreme one, drive 400 kilometers to receive emergency care. I would think that should be a priority one, for people should be able to expect in British Columbia, a well-developed country like Canada, that they could have access to emergency room care.
Absolutely. We are not where we need to be when it comes to healthcare in general. We are connecting a lot of people with family doctors and nurse practitioners, absolutely. But at the end of the day, if someone's not connected, that doesn't matter. We need to be working with our rural communities. We just announced loan forgiveness for medical professionals that are going to commit to 5 years in rural communities to bolster those ERs. There's more work to do, getting more internationally trained doctors, nurses into our system. Again, we've brought in 800 doctors last year, a few thousand nurses, a lot more work to do. But again, it only matters once it's hitting community. And so there are plans in place to do that.
Why does it take an election though, to put, I saw that one, and that seems like a really good way to do so. They used to do that in Northern Alberta too, induce people to come buy them a free house and if they stay for 5 years. Why is it only during the election? And then one of the bigger questions is Surrey doctors, there's an article that went out and they were calling for a leadership change with Adrian Dix. We've asked multiple times for an interview with Adrian Dix to no avail. We've interviewed other ministers, including the Premier himself. Adrian Dix does not seem to want to talk.
I can't answer for Adrian, obviously.
But I'm just saying, but accountability though makes, when you're, especially that position that held this basically that minister ran the province for 2.5 years.
Yeah, my commitment to Kelowna and to British Columbia is to be on the inside to help answer some of these questions and bring them forward. Obviously, I can't speak for the government. I'm just running with them now. But I think it's been very clear that we need to see some changes when it comes to healthcare. You'll see that in our platform, and I think it's important.
I mean, you have a lot of experience in Kelowna for sure, and you understand the city, and tourism is definitely one of our tough spots, and tourism affected by wildfires for sure. And then we kind of got that nickname Smokanogan and stuff like that. That's definitely not helping. And Renee Merrifield has said that the Airbnb policy has hurt tourism. You kind of said that as well. And how do we fix our tourism so that wildfires, and then maybe something like the Made in Kelowna solution or something like that, so that Kelowna can be seen, because Kelowna is like a tourism mecca. I mean, look behind us. Look, it's like an amazing place to live.
Let me be clear. The people of Kelowna elect me, and that is my job, is to bring the voice of people of Kelowna to Victoria, and that's what I'm committed to doing. That's why I've said we need a Made in Kelowna solution for short-term rentals. I've been very clear on that. I brought it forward to the party and to David himself. I do believe that short-term rentals across the board have affected our long-term rental market, which is why it had to be regulated. It's why the city of Kelowna led that charge initially with licensing. But we are a resort community, and there are certain pockets that were designated for short-term rentals in the past that should be considered. And that's one point that I think needs to be brought forward to government. Again, not blanket throughout the city, and our council's been very clear that they don't want that either. But it's working alongside local governments to understand what the community needs and adapting provincial policy.
Yeah, so you kind of like straddle that line, right? Because the provincial government also kind of like you guys made the OCP and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden the provinces come in and say, well, we're going to kind of give a carte blanche to developing other lands and stuff like that. How do you think that really affects the OCP, or do you think you guys have kind of rolled with it and kind of figured it out?
So I think the benefit with the city of Kelowna is that we really saw that we needed to have blanket zoning to bring infill into our urban centers. And that's through our 2040 OCP that we worked for 4 years on, consulting the community on, that we started to build, which really aligned with the direction the province was wanting to go. So when it came time to make those changes, it was quite easy. Back in 2017, before I ran for council, I sat down with home builders and I said, what can we do at a local level to increase housing? And one of their number one recommendations were, blanket zone the city. Don't do pocket zoning, because it just increases certain neighborhoods in terms of land costs, but throughout the city. So our OCP reflects that. So when the housing legislation came down the pipe, it really aligned with the direction that we've been going.
One of the things City Kelowna has done very well is like rental housing. We've seen a ton of rental housing approved, at least, right? Some of it being, coming to occupancy just recently and stuff like that. So we're starting to see a lot of rentals, and that should ease the pressure in the market as well. Kelowna is also going to grow tremendously, though, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
We're such a destination. How do we keep up the infrastructure that's transportation, the university, all that kind of stuff? Like, what would you fight for if you were going to Victoria, other than the short-term rental thing you talked about? But what are the key issues that Loyal has?
So I think you're right, Jim. We've seen a huge influx of rental buildings, and we need to continue that momentum. I always say all housing is good housing, whether it's market or it's subsidized or anything in between. We have to keep building more housing. We're in a housing crisis. When it comes to infrastructure, that's where we need a local official that understands what the city is advocating for. We've got a strong capital plan. We've got advocacy to the provincial government for transportation, for infrastructure like schools and healthcare facilities, but we really need that local voice on the inside that lives here in Kelowna, unlike my conservative opponent, to be able to bring that forward to government. Because when you have someone on the inside, it's a lot easier to get those priorities across the line.
You're on the younger side of the candidates, I'd say.
Just for a few more years. Just for a few more years.
Also a little bit technology. You drive an electric car and all that kind of stuff, a little more progressive. Where do you see that, like, you having a voice as far as technology goes in the future of British Columbia?
Well, I think embedding younger voices is key to developing anything and inspiring more younger people to get involved, because that's where we bring in more innovation. We're committed to renewable energy. We are committed to doubling our charging infrastructure throughout the province. And that's something that I've always brought to council, is bringing that younger voice to say, hey, this is what younger people are talking about. I'm reaching out to the university, reaching out to the colleges, and having those conversations, because again, we can't get pigeonholed to one specific issue for one subset of the population. We have to represent everyone. And there's a lot of cynicism right now with young people not seeing hope for the future. And by having those conversations and embedding what they're saying into what we're doing, that's crucial in where we're going as a province.
Do you think, I mean, on both sides, neither side is innocent on this negativity where they start throwing rocks at each other instead of talking policy? Because this is the voters' chance to say, what are you going to do for me? What like, how are you going to help us? You know, like the rock throwing doesn't really help. You know what I mean? Just like because it's more fear mongering and stuff like that. And I haven't heard any of that coming out of you. But like, do you think that's productive, or should we stick to the issues?
You know, I think it's important that we have contrast around what's been delivered in the past under certain ideologies, for sure. But I'm here to show Kelowna that I understand what we need and where I'm going to advocate, and I'll push back where necessary to represent Kelowna. Whether someone's voted with the NDP in the past or the Conservative Party in the past, it's really about finding that right candidate that understands our city, that's doing the work, that can get to work on day one. Someone that doesn't have government experience, I can tell you, I started council 2018, it was drinking from a fire hose. So to go to Victoria with that similar experience, it's going to set us back because we won't have that person on the inside that has the experience to really advocate for the interior and for Kelowna.
It's been said, though, that when you're trying to win an election, that everybody kind of moves to the center, right? And I would say that you're probably more in the center. So it surprised me when you ran for the NDP because it seemed to be more center right, center, you know what I mean? Like more centrist. And then, you know, what David Eby's doing recently with, you know, like the carbon tax and then the involuntary care. Shouldn't we like consider like the center more so? Because I mean, that's where most of the population is, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a centrist. You know, when it comes to safety, I believe in policing, but I also believe in having the right services for people to be able to recover. And I think the majority of British Columbians are centrists, and that's the candidate that they're looking for. They don't want someone on the alt-left. They don't want the alt-right. They want someone in the center that can make sound and stable decisions to represent the community. And so, unfortunately, we operate in a party system, so it's really finding that party that can best align with who you are. You won't find me running with the BC Conservative. It's just not who I am. So I chose a party where I felt I could best deliver results for Kelowna. We've worked alongside this government for 6 years while I've been on council, and we've seen them invest here, but they really need to understand Kelowna at a deeper level.
Wildfires, one of the biggest concerns for British Columbians, well, especially us in the Okanagan, right? With loss of homes, we've had a couple of major fires in the past 20 years. Forestry companies say forestry is a shambles, including some of the other leaders, and even David Eby admits that more needs to be done. How do we get the forestry companies involved in a better future for British Columbians, where we can mitigate more, spend less on fighting fires and more on prevention of fires?
Yeah, you know, I led the communications last year during the McDougall Creek wildfire, and what was very evident is that the way we manage our forests needs to change. And you speak to Indigenous people that agree that we need to return to the original ways of managing forests with prescribed burns, etc. Whether do you want all your smoke in the summer, or do you want it in the spring and the fall when there's actual venting? It makes logical sense. And then when it comes to forestry, again, it's working with the sector to have task force in place to understand how the industry has changed and evolved, and having that business brain around the table to question it. I've always done that. I always say I come to the table with a business brain and a social heart, but at the end of the day, I don't think government should ever dictate to an industry. You need to work alongside them collaboratively, and that's where you get the best solutions.
You're NDP in the Kelowna Centre, Kelowna Mission area, not for a long time, right?
Never. It's never happened.
See, there you go. Never. So you're looking to kind of convince, you know, like a population that's, well, I guess the difference would be that they were BC United, and there's not really, because it wasn't really a conservative thing either. So it's kind of leveled the playing field in a way. And they're polling. I did an interview with Mario Conseco, the pollster, and he said the parties are polling about even. There's about a point between them, but David Eby's polling a little higher than John Rustad on likability.
Yeah, it's definitely been one of the wackiest BC elections elections that we've ever seen. I can't
Unprecedented.
Unprecedented. I can't wait to read the book when it comes out. And that's what's made this really unpredictable in terms of forecasting. But what I can say is I believe that British Columbians are going to dig into who is going to be the best candidate when they go into the polling station, who can deliver the results. That's what I'm committed to doing. Again, my commitment is to Kelowna and representing the people here. And regardless whether they voted for me or not, when I win, my job is to represent everybody.
So if you do win, if you're successful.
When I win.
When you win. Do you step down as a city councillor?
Yeah, so I would be stepping aside as a city councillor. I'm not actually required to by law.
I get that. So you could wear a couple of hats, right?
Yeah, and there are a lot of really qualified, excited people to throw their hat in that ring.
Yeah, no, I imagine there is. If you don't win, obviously, provincial politics is probably still in your future, I would take it, right?
Well, we'll see. We'll see, definitely. Obviously, I'm banking on winning on election night. And we'll cross that bridge when you get there. I think with politics in general, you can never give up your day job because this is one that you do not have job security in because you're up for a job interview.
You've been a long-time businessman in Kelowna as well, right?
Yeah.
How is it when you're knocking on doors? What's the feedback you're getting from most people, like in the business community? What's their biggest stress?
Times are hard right now for people, and we can't underestimate that. Whether you own a business, whether you have a family, or you're just working, times are really hard, and we need to be there and acknowledge that. I don't think we can Pollyanna and say everything is perfect, and any leader should be able to say we need to get to work. But people are concerned about big issues like the cost of living, like healthcare, like all of those things. When I talk to business owners, they have a hard time finding staff because they can't find housing. And so we have to continue to focus on housing, and you'll hear me continue to say that. From an economic development perspective, I also think we have to diversify in terms of who we're attracting here in terms of investment. We've got a great opportunity with YLW International Airport to expand outside passenger travel, but also aviation innovation. Because if we're going to support small businesses year round, we have to have people living here that can afford to frequent those restaurants and celebrate in February when they want to go out on a Friday night, because tourism is really volatile right now. We now have hazard season running from June until September, and we have people kind of adverse to coming here in the summer because they don't know how
I've seen it even in the people that still have their Airbnb for the 3 months, where like people are saying, "Oh, can I get a refund if there's a fire?" So Kelowna's really got that name out there now for the wildfire thing, and I think it's one of the most pressing issues that we have. So
absolutely,
more mitigation I think makes more sense. And then obviously, I did an interview with Coulson Aviation, the largest wildfire company in the world. But they don't fight fires in BC. They have no contracts in BC. Go back and watch that one. And they're frustrated. They just purchased 11 737s from Southwest Airlines, right, and that. And fighting fires, it's the first like 12 hours is where you can really gain on a fire. And then after that, if it goes overnight, it's usually like, you're trying to put brakes in and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. I think we spent $1 billion last year fighting fires, and people like to see the planes. They like to see the action of what's happening in the fires. But really what we need to focus on is that mitigation, like we've already talked about. Logan Lake did an exceptional job of that, saved their community years ago because of their mitigation efforts. I don't think enough is placed on to mitigation. We can spend probably double the budget than we do right now, and it's still probably a quarter of fighting fires reactionary. So while people like to see the planes in the sky, and we need to obviously fight fires,
right.
The unique aspect of the interior in terms of needing more fuel mitigation, involving Indigenous peoples in those decisions is really key.
What do you like? Kelowna has like a large tourism sector, a good growing tech sector, and then an aviation sector that's doing extremely well. Mm-hmm. What other industries should be attracted to Kelowna? What would you try to bring in?
Yeah, so it's not only bringing in, but also fostering the growth of the industries that have been born here. Like we look at Vitalis. I did one of my quick casts with James Seabrook, who's seeing exponential growth, but needs that local voice to be able to advocate for some of the provincial programs that they might not necessarily be eligible for. There could be certain components that they might not be meeting. And so not only do we need to attract new business, but it's also supporting the ones that are here. And I think we just look to our partners at UBCO with some of the most budding technology innovations that have startups that want to be attracted here in clean energy, for example. And we have the space and the capacity to do that, but we just have to have that local voice that can actually say, hey, this is working or that's not working, and how can we get this across the finish line and negotiate a little bit.
Second crossing.
Yeah, so this was a study that was done by the BC Liberals back in 2017, previous to 2017, and it came out then. They spent $2 million studying it, and it's been continually discussed. To build a second crossing would be about $3 billion, and it would bulldoze through Knox Mountain and into our downtown core. So to be making campaign promises like this and promising it by 2032 is irresponsible in my mind. We at the City of Kelowna have an advocacy plan for increased capacity of our transportation networks. The current bridge can be expanded, and a lot of this would probably be about $300 million versus $3 billion.
I have a question for you on the second crossing. Has anybody done a study to say from Penticton, that old road that runs like that on the KVR, like coming down the Penticton that side, as opposed to what that bridge would cost?
I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Because it seems like it's something worth exploring, though, right? But
at the end of the day, the congestion that we see coming across the bridge, 95% of it is either coming from West Kelowna or from Kelowna. Mm-hmm. And so we just have to realize that not a lot of the traffic is originating from the South Okanagan per se, and it's really managing the traffic once it hits us down here at Harvey Avenue. We're planning the bridge itself can be expanded as it already sits. The Clement extension, which is planned to be a multimodal corridor connecting UBCO out to Wild W. Those are key components that we need to consider.
I don't want to turn this into a city discussion, but like a lot of people have said, like Abbott, some of those roads should be cut off, and you shouldn't be able to get back on Highway 97 until like Gordon.
Well, the lights are a major barrier. The lights are controlled by the province because it's
right. That's why I'm asking you now. Right?
Yeah, but again, these are decisions that have to be made in concert with the City of Kelowna, and there has to be that partnership with local government, because without it, you can't create that synergy. And a lot of folks talk about removing those lights or removing private driveways, but it has impacts on our local residents, on our local businesses, and so it has to be done very carefully in a way that's going to work for the community and not the province dictating to us what we're going to receive.
Have they done a study to show how much increase in flow that would be if they pull out like 6 or 7 of those lights up to Gordon or something?
I believe if you looked at the Central Okanagan Integrated Transportation Network Plan, which is hundreds of pages, it speaks to this. Obviously, I know the high level of some of the big projects, but we know from transportation engineers if we remove some lights and private accesses to the highway, it would increase the traffic flow a lot quicker.
Yeah. What the rail trail? Mm-hmm. John Rustad was in town this past weekend. He made some announcements on the rail trail.
Yep.
And removing the encampments. What's the NDP's plan for that?
So first and foremost, they sent out a text and said, do you support removing encampments from British Columbia? And I think everybody watching this, every political party, and especially the people living in tent cities would agree we should not have tent cities. People are there because we do not have housing. John Rustad said he'll cancel our housing plan to build 300,000 units of housing. And when asked what their plan is, they don't have one. So if we're going to get rid of encampments, which is our ultimate goal, I can say that working with the City of Kelowna, we have to be building the safe accommodations that people need in conjunction with the services they need. So we've seen that with Step Place, the tiny homes. We have seen 6 people out of the 40 in 6 months transition out, being connected to addiction services, employment services, and get full-time employment. So 6 out of 40, that's pretty good in 6 months. 15 of those are now connected to mental health and substance use services, and that can't be understated. And I think that's going to be the future, is how are we connecting people to the services they need to become more stable, and making sure we have accommodations so that we can't have encampments anymore. Right now, it's a human right that people can shelter outdoors if there is not enough shelter space. And we've been building more and more and more, but poverty also keeps rising. And so unless we address poverty with housing and the supports people need, we're never going to get rid of rail trails. So we have to work on that with the plan.
Immigration is a big part of that, though. BC welcomed, I did the interview with David Eby, and a couple 100,000 people, and then more coming. And he said that the federal government's plan is basically daft. That, like access to healthcare, access to housing and all that is actually not even not available for the immigrants coming, but also not available to current British Columbians, which adds the stress level. How is the NDP going to kind of voice their concerns with that?
Well, I think David's been really clear that we need to be voicing that to the federal government. Rennie this year, when they did our housing forecast earlier this year, they said, they asked the federal government about their plan on immigration. They didn't really have a forecast in terms of how many people they're bringing in and how to support communities. Toronto's mayor has come out against it with a ton of immigrants living on their streets now. And so we have to make sure immigration policy matches what communities can handle, whether that's housing, public transit, healthcare, schools. We can't be welcoming more people in without a plan. And so we have to work in concert with the federal government. Immigration plays a part in our economy, absolutely, especially with foreign students training at our college, for example. But it has to be in concert with local government, provincial government, and the federal government.
Yeah, access to healthcare is one of the things that really is tough for a lot of people, right? Getting an access to a doctor and that. And we're at that 5-minute mark where you get to talk and I get to be quiet and listen.
30 minutes goes by so fast.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. What I would just share with people is that regardless of how you voted in the past, whether you've been a New Democrat or a Green Party member or a Conservative voter, it's really about choosing the candidate that is going to best deliver results for you. I always challenge the status quo. I'm not one to just fall in line with what I'm told to do. Obviously, I get in trouble. But it's really finding that candidate that knows our city, that knows the solutions, and that can advocate from the inside. And I truly weighed my options to find what party that would best suit. And that's why I ended up where I'm at today. And so I know the plans the city of Kelowna has. I work in concert, obviously, with council. I've sat there for 6 years. And I also know how to work across party lines to deliver the results that people need. So I know that it's really hard for people right now. I know we've got immense challenges that we need to overcome. But at the end of the day, we have to find the people that are best going to solve those challenges and bring results to Kelowna. We know the interior needs more attention, and the only way to do that is elect people that know how to work inside government, that have the experience and the relationships to do it. That is me, and I can't wait to be your MLA for Kelowna Centre.
I urge you to get out and vote. If you have young people in your home especially, have them watch these videos. These 30-minute interviews I think are really good because you get to hear from the candidate for a long time, and they're not clipped. They can talk and they can express themselves, and you get to understand them better. Kent does a lot of interviews too, like the 5-minute ones, so you can go watch the ones there. And Loyal's done a lot of his own videos. So try to understand the candidate, whether that's a Conservative candidate, NDP candidate, and they knock on your door. And you don't like the NDP, still listen. And if you're a Conservative and you don't like the Conservative, listen to them as well, right? Because this is your chance as a voter to understand, because this is when they want to hear you, right? Because lots of times after the election, it's tough to get the voice, especially when we didn't have any representation in the Valley, right? Yeah. So the interior and the rural parts of British Columbia need more voice.
Absolutely. And unless we elect leaders that can work inside government, that voice won't be there. But it's really about doing the research around who is going to be the best candidate, who is best prepared, who can get to work on day one, and do that by attending the forums, going to the chamber debate, watching these videos. And KelownaNow has done such an exceptional job of covering the election. I think back to the spring, Jim, you started these.
I think it's so important to understand the candidate, right? Because this is and to hold them accountable, and when you ask for an interview, they should come, right? Because that's how you get held accountable, right? Because if you don't want to answer to the meeting, because I'm not asking the questions for Jim, I'm asking the questions for the public, right? So that's my job. My role in this is to ask questions for the public, right? And your job is to answer to the public, right? Because you're asking for their vote. It's a big responsibility.
Absolutely.
So there is advanced polling that's on right now too, so you can get out there. So don't, if you're not sure if you're going to be in town or whatever, get out there and do the advanced voting, but try to make an informed decision. And I encourage you, again, if you have young people, encourage them to exercise that vote as well.
Absolutely. And look forward to the results on October 19th, Jim.
We'll be here.
Awesome.
We'll be here all night long. We'll be here. Renee Merrifield is going to be at the desk with me, and we're going to be here all night. We'll have reporters out at the various campaign headquarters, and we'll be at Loyal's as well.
Perfect.
And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
Thanks for watching.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. KelownaNow, local, independent. News you can trust.